What is going on, guys? Blink here, back with a new Fortnite guide. We'll be getting a little technical and I'll be showing you guys the different sniper headshot ranges, so that way you can guesstimate your shots better and just improve your overall sniper hit rate. I'll also be giving away $100 worth of V-Bucks to one lucky person, so once again, visit the link in the description to enter that giveaway too. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications if you guys want to win a free Amazon gift card every single time I upload. All you gotta do is check the pinned comments section, and in the pinned comments, I'll have posted an Amazon gift card code every time I upload. By turning on notifications, you'll have a way better chance of getting here first and redeeming that code. This video will utilize more of the bolt, but all methods apply to the semi-auto too. Let's get this video started. At 50 meters, your target will be this size unscoped, and when scoped, you'll be this size. To identify if your target is really 50 meters, if the 6 lines or more are inside the target's body, then no adjustments are needed. This shot will directly hit your target in the head. At 50 meters, the bullet is going anywhere you aim it, and no adjustments are needed simply because the target is very close for a high-powered rifle. That being said, any shot will impact your target anywhere you adjust it. At 100 meters, your target will be this size unscoped, and when scoped in, he'll be this size. To identify if your target is really 100 meters, the first line will line up with his eyes with a perfect fit across, the second line will line up with his chest, the third line will line up with his hips, the fourth line will line up with his knees, and the fifth line will line up right in between his feet. If the fifth line is lined up in between his feet, and the first line is lined up in between his eyes, then you are lined up for a 100-meter headshot. Take the shot, or adjusting your reticle directly on the player's head will hit your target in the chest. This will also give you a better chance of impacting the target. The difference between a 100-meter target and a 50-meter target is that the 50-meter one will have the first 7 lines inside the player model. When pointing the crosshair directly on the face, the 8th line will be just under the feet, while the 100-meter target will have the first 5 lines touching. Once again, for the 50-meter target, if you have more than 6 green lines inside the target, then take the shot without any adjustment. Now, on the 100-meter target, if you can line up the first line with the eyes or the upper head, and the 5th line is lined up with the toes, then the shot will hit the head of the target. At 150 meters, your target will be this size unscoped, and when scoped in, he'll be this size. To identify if your target is really 150 meters, the first horizontal line will be a little above his head. The second line will be fully across his chest and arms. The third will be across his hips and almost fully covering them. The fourth line will be touching his feet and also being slightly longer than them. So pay attention to the fourth line and the second line. If you can line up the fourth line under his feet and you can see the second line is perfectly across his torso, then you are lined up for a 150-meter headshot. Take the shot or lower it a pixel for a better chance of impact. The difference between a 150-meter target and a 100-meter target is that the 100-meter target will have 5 points of connection, with the second line across the chest still exposing the left and right side. The third line will be across the hips, also still exposing the left and right side, while the 150-meter target has 3 points of connection, with the second line lining up almost perfectly with the chest, and the third line lining up perfectly with his hips. The fourth line is touching his feet, and the farthest point of contact from the fourth line is his chest, which would be the second line. On the 100-meter, the fifth line is touching his legs, and the farthest point of contact from the fifth line is his face, which would be the first line. At 200 meters, your target will be this size unscoped, and when scoped in, he'll be this size. To identify if your target is 200 meters, the first line will be pretty far off your target. The second line will be on the neck of the target and will pass both shoulders a good amount. The third line will line up with the growing area, but the left and right side of the target will still be exposed a little. And the fourth line will not line up with his feet, but be slightly under them. If the second line is placed on the neck and the fourth line ends up being slightly under the feet, then you are lined up for a 200-meter headshot. Take the shot or lower it a pixel for a better chance of impact. The difference between a 200-meter target and a 150-meter target is that both will almost have similar fourth lines, but on the 150-meter target, the head is closer to the first line, with the chest being almost perfectly covered by the second line, while the 200-meter target's head is just above the second line, and the second line will cross the chest by a good amount. Another way to differentiate the 200-meter target is by lining up the second line with the neck, and the fourth line should be right under the feet. At 250 meters, your target will be this size unscoped, and when scoped in, he'll be this size. To identify if your target is really 250 meters, the first line will be nowhere near your target. The second line will be right across the face. The third line will be across the hips and pretty much perfectly covering them. The fourth line will be pretty low, but not being that close to the feet. There are a total of 2 connections, being the second and third line. If you line up the second line across the head, and the third line is perfectly across the hips, while the fourth line has a good spacing between the targets, then you are lined up for a 250-meter meter headshot. Take the shot or lower it a pixel for a better chance of impact. The 250 meter and the 200 meter targets will both have 2 points of connection. The difference between a 250 meter target and a 200 meter target is that the third line on the 200 meter one will slightly expose the left and right side of the target, with the second line being neck level, while the third line on the 200 meter one will perfectly connect to the left and right side of the target, with the second line being on his eyes. For the 250 meter target, line up the second line face level, and if the third line is on his hips and the fourth is under his feet, then the shot will hit the head of the target. Now, Fortnite stopped rendering the character model after 284 meters, so the shot was the farthest I was able to analyze. I did some research and found out character models do not render farther around this distance to a certain extent. Now, I'd explain, but that's for another video as I would need to show some examples. Anyways, at 284 meters, your target will be this size unscoped, which is absolutely tiny, and when scoped he'll be this size. There are a total of 1 connections. Now, at this range, it will be harder to identify the range as there is only 1 point of connection, but we can tell that the target is basically in between the second and fourth line. He is slightly closer to the second line though. Line up the third line with the torso. If the third line is slightly longer than his hips and his head is closer to the second line, then you are lined up for a 284 meter headshot. Take the shot or lower it a pixel for a better chance of impact. The difference between a 284 meter target and a 250 meter target is that the 250 meter target will have 2 points of connection, while the 284 meter target will only have 1. The 250 meter target will have the third line across the hips with it almost covering them. There is about a pixel of the target exposed. The second line will be across the face, while the 284 meter target has a third line also across the hips, but a pixel of the line overlapping the target. The second line will not line up with anything, but the second line will be significantly closer to the target than the fourth line. If you can line up the third line with the hips and the second and fourth lines are not touching, but you can see the second line is closer to the head, then you are lined up for a headshot. Well, that's it for this video. I want to start adding in more technical videos into my channel as it can maybe help a lot of people out. Now, for this video, obviously you won't have a lot of time to line up your shots, but if you can learn the gist of the lineups, you can readjust your crosshair pretty quickly. Well, if you guys have enjoyed this video, a sub would be super helpful as it keeps me pushing to make these videos for you guys. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want me to make more of these technical videos. Anyways guys, thank you for watching and I'll see you on the next one.